Every one of the 8 billion people living on our planet desires to have a complete body. The functioning of all 5 senses and the fulfillment of our limbs' duties is one of the basic functions of life for everyone, isn't it? If you think so, you are mistaken. Dave Openshaw lost his right leg a while ago. Contrary to expectations, this was something he had always desired. Dave was born into a healthy family. He grew up as a happy boy and did the things other children did. But something was out of the ordinary. He didn't feel like the others and realized he was different around the ages of 4 or 5, because according to Dave, his right leg shouldn't have been there. It was as if this leg was not a part of his body. In fact, there was nothing wrong with his leg. It was a part of him. But he thought this leg did not belong to him, and this thought followed him at every moment of his life. I know you are surprised and even frightened, friends, but everything I'm about to tell you is word for word true. For many people, even the thought of losing any limb is terrifying. But it wasn't like that for Dave. He was unhappy because he had 2 legs, and this feeling was pushing him into loneliness and depression. And one day, while browsing the internet, he accidentally learned that there were other people who were also uncomfortable with their limbs. This condition might be one of the most unusual disorders, and Dave learned for the first time then that the emotion he was experiencing had a name: Apotemnophilia. Apotemnophilia is a mental disorder characterized by the desire to have an emotional or physical disability or discomfort with being initially healthy. It can be incredibly difficult for us to understand this condition. But these individuals are aware that their limbs are there. They feel them and are conscious that there is no issue. However, they are overwhelmed by the feeling that the limb is superfluous. If you had a 3rd arm or leg, you would certainly be uncomfortable and want to get rid of this excess through surgery. This is precisely the emotional turmoil experienced by patients with apotemnophilia, such that there are recorded cases of patients pleading with doctors to cut off the limbs they see as extra, and some even attempting to do it themselves. Both legally and logically, we do not have the right to dispose of our bodily integrity. Even if the subject is this illness, the laws do not change. And because the laws prevent amputation of a limb without a life-threatening situation, numerous cases have been recorded to date of people trying to cut off their own limbs or jumping from a high place to force doctors to amputate. In fact, they don't just think it's an extra body part, their brains keep them under tremendous pressure to get rid of this excess. And unfortunately, no known effective treatment method has been found yet. 2 conditions have been identified in these patients. The first is that they are all normal, ordinary individuals with no social discomforts. As horrific as what they do may seem to us, when we get to know them, we see that they are no different from ordinary people. The second is that they know exactly where their limbs need to be cut off. That is, an individual experiencing apotemnophilia can determine down to the millimeter which part of their body they want to be rid of. Isn't that interesting? Dave Openshaw describes the feeling that drove him to amputation as follows: "It was a constant clash of ideas in my head. I was about to go insane and I was aware that this was not normal. I tried to put my thoughts aside, but it started again every time. I guess perfect hell is something like this." What could be the source of this incomprehensible problem? A research team at the University of California believes they may have found the answer by focusing on a specific area of the brain, the parietal lobe, in their studies. The parietal lobe is responsible for spatial orientation, taste perception, sensations of pain and touch, and processing information from joints and muscles. The research team has come to the conclusion that there may be damage or a deficiency in this area of the brain in individuals with apotemnophilia. In their tests, researchers measured responses in the parietal lobe by making contact with the person's body and found that while normal responses were determined in the brains of ordinary people, the same result was not observed in the brains of patients when the limbs they were uncomfortable with were touched. It appears that the limbs patients want to be amputated are not recognized by their brains and are perceived as superfluous. In short, the unwanted organ can be felt as much as a normal organ, but it does not find a corresponding response in the brain. We perceive the human body as a whole with all its parts. They, on the other hand, think they become whole when they are diminished. In other words, they believe that when they get rid of unwanted limbs, they actually move from disability to having a normal body. Of course, Dave Openshaw is not the only victim of this disease. Patients with equally extraordinary outcomes are seen every day. The number of patients who have destroyed 2 hands, 2 legs, or even their hearing abilities reaches thousands. An American named Jewel Shuping had dreamed of being blind since childhood and was passionately attached to this desire. So much so that even at a young age, Jewel would try to walk through dark corridors without seeing anything. And when she turned 18, despite having no defects in her eyes or reduction in vision, she began to pretend to be visually impaired using dark sunglasses and a cane. Interestingly, she didn't just pretend. She tried to live without really seeing by closing her eyes under the frame. But that wasn't enough for her. When her mother told her how much looking at the sun would damage her eyes, she lay on the grass for hours watching the sun in the hope of losing her sight. And in 2015, a psychologist she met online would change her life. The psychologist invited Jewel to Chicago, and after keeping her under observation for 2 weeks, they agreed to pour chemicals into her eyes. After pouring the chemicals, they would go to the emergency room claiming it was an accident. Jewel looked in the mirror for the last time and said goodbye to herself before dropping the chemical. But when she woke up the next morning, she realized she could still see, and, far from regretting what she had done, she had nervous breakdowns because she could see. However, when she completely lost her vision and became blind within 6 months, she had finally achieved her dreams. Although her family disowned her after learning the incident was not an accident, Jewel stated, "I have always believed that this is how I should have been from the beginning. I should have been born blind." The psychological condition experienced by Jewel is almost universally seen in individuals suffering from the same disorder. Patients exhibit behaviors associated with disabilities, even though they are not disabled. For example, Chloe Jennings, despite being completely healthy, wears leg braces and uses a wheelchair. Chloe, who can ski and has a completely healthy body, has the incredible dream of becoming paralyzed by getting rid of her spinal cord. Chloe, a research scientist educated at Cambridge University, lives both her private life and her professional life in a wheelchair. Research on the childhoods of individuals with Apotemnophilia has revealed an interesting detail. Many of the patients had closest childhood friends who were amputees. This is more than a coincidence. It's one of the first expressions of the disorder. That is, patients, even at a young age, could not make sense of their unusual condition and thought they had a disability. They exhibit a positive inclination towards amputated individuals, seeing them as healthy individuals who have overcome their disabilities. Children experiencing apotemnophilia admired other children who were amputated or paralyzed, seeing them as actually healthy, even superior to themselves. Initially, the disorder was only categorized within clinical psychology and psychiatry, but recent research supports its inclusion in neurology. However, as medical research continues, various societies have different stances on treatment and limb amputation. The medical world is divided on this issue. The principle of sanctity of bodily integrity prevents limb amputation when there is no life-threatening situation for the patient. Therefore, while group therapies and antidepressants are recommended for treatment, there are also views that support fulfilling patients' requests for surgery due to it being a neurological case, i.e., a functional disorder in the brain. Indeed, we mentioned that no treatment method with proven positive results has been found yet. We will see what path the medical world will take and what actions it will undertake. However, until a permanent cure is found, apotemnophilia will continue to be among the most intriguing disorders. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me. See you later.